My name is Mary O'Hara, and I am currently leading the Rock Movement Service Unit at Rock USA. And Rock Movement is a brand new service unit. I know most of you heard this because I introduced myself at the last session, but just to say that we have had Rock Association as a part of Rock USA since 2013. But we had not had the capacity to put staff resources behind it. So with the creation of Rock Movement, we've essentially committed to staffing the Rock Association and all of the Rock Association members. So I'm going to just do a quick couple of things before we get into strategic planning, because it's about why we're going to ultimately ask all you guys to participate in strategic planning for Rock USA. So I'm going to start out by saying, and Natividad and Marjorie are not allowed to answer, or Kathleen, but who knows what the mission of Rock Association is? Anybody? All right.
I'd have to go back to the website.
Right, I get it, absolutely. Marjorie, do you want to speak to that? You have to unmute. There, yeah.
I was having trouble. I don't know it like as far as a statement. Do you know what I mean? Or what else? Do you mean like for putting words to it? I'm horrible with things that way. But I would just say that it's for us to all work together in having the residents be an active value part within their communities. But I know that's not the sentence and how it goes. But I'm
No.
horrible at those kind of things.
That's all right. You've done a very good job.
Can you help me out, Mary?
The Rock Association
Or did I freeze?
You did just freeze now, but you're coming back. But
Okay.
you did a very good job. Rock Association's purpose is it is committed to the development of all of the members of the association. It is to build a peer-to-peer network of all of the rocks associated with Rock USA. And it is to represent the resident-owned community's interests on Rock USA's board of directors and to outside stakeholders in order to move resources and interest and attitude and market forces in a direction that enables resident-owned communities to be all that they can be. So it's a tall mission. The members of the Rock Association are the Rock corporations themselves, but the services are available to all of the members in each Rock. So each resident-owned community has a vote in electing their representative for their region, and and they also have a vote if there's any change to the bylaws or the articles of incorporation to change Rock Association's purpose. So I just wanted to put that out there. Rock Associations, go ahead, Rick, you got a question?
Yes, could you clarify when you say that they have a vote now, it's individual vote or is it per community vote?
Per community vote. Excellent question. Per community vote. And as Marjorie I've heard her explain very eloquently many times, that's to make it equal, that even a community that has 100 homes and a community that has 50 homes only has one member vote on the Rock Association representatives in order to vote for elect a representative for their region. I'll just put this little plug in for two things. One is that Marjorie's seat as the representative for the Midwest and Central and South part of the country is up for election again this fall. And Marjorie will be running for that seat again, but there will be a request for nominations in case anyone else out there wants to run for that Rock Association Director seat. And the only rocks that will be voting will be those that are in that region of the country, that part of Rock Association. So each year, the directors are elected on a rotating basis so that we've always got 2 standing directors. The other thing that's going to be coming out is a change in the bylaws to allow the board to appoint 3 new directors to the Rock Association Board in order to expand their capacity. So that will be a change to the bylaws, and each one of your resident-owned communities will have the opportunity to vote on that bylaw change. So you'll be getting that mailing this fall as well. And your boards will be asked to vote on it. And the reason I'm throwing that all out there, yeah,
And
I'll
just
come right
to-
back, Tividad, one
Okay.
second. The reason I'm throwing that all out there at the beginning of this strategic planning session is to say that's all part of a strategy, and strategic thinking and setting goals and priorities is how the Rock Association came to be, and how this expansion came to be, and how the elections were laid out. So I just wanted to give that little picture of the Rock USA beginning in 2013 to make strategic decisions about how it was going to increase the role of Rock leaders in the overall enterprise and the direction of the enterprise. So Natividad, who was involved very early on in those decisions as one of the very first Rock Association directors. Go ahead, Natividad.
So once you pass the bylaws and you vote your new people in for this year, how does that include the following 3? Will that be the 2023 election?
2023, they won't be elected, they'll be appointed.
Appointed?
Yep,
Okay.
they will
But
be
the
appointed.
the 3 elected are the ones that will serve on the Rock USA Board of Directors. The 3 appointed will just be on the board, and then will help for us for reaching out. So there'll be more of us to reach out for assisting the communities and reaching out. If
How are
that
you
makes-
going to pick your appointed folks?
Well, we have a process that we just did, the Rock Association did, because they had to appoint a director in the West after a resignation. But I'm not going to get into that right now, because all of that will definitely be laid out and discussed at a future date. But I don't want to do that here. What I want to do first, if you don't mind, is to ask folks what they took away from the strategic planning session 1. What were your takeaways?
Ruh-roh.
I know.
Take a minute, just take a minute to think about it.
You couldn't even pay me $1 million to have an answer at this
Well,
point.
for me, I think that when it comes to strategic planning, as far as a name, that's not what comes to mind, is thinking, oh, strategic plan. It's something that for part comes natural to me in a way, and I never had a name for it. So it's, that whole getting an idea, having that vision, how am I going to get there? What am I going to do? Is kind of for me what it is. So it's working through the process. What do I want? How am I going to get there? And what are the steps that are going to be along the way?
Great.
Edie said you took her words.
Glad I
That's
could help
great.
you out, Edie.
Thank you.
That's helpful. No, that's great. So Marjorie is saying she didn't know she was strategic planning. She didn't know she was being strategic, but this is something that you just do because that's how you get things done. What else did other people take away? Give me another one.
I think being able to still find that you have new ideas available to yourself and to others, because it feels like sometimes you run out of ideas or needs, right? Especially if you're doing so much at one time. Like right now, we're so busy. And then you think back and you go, wow, what did I do last year? I can't remember. So I think that learning, being able to learn from others on a continuous basis through strategic planning helps a lot for me to know what I'm going to do for the following years, or the upcoming years, I should say. And so this is really good work over for me, because I need this to continue thinking.
So I'm going to say, Natividad, that if I may, just say strategic planning for you helps you get out of the day-to-day and start to think about the bigger picture, and also think about the future and plan forward, because you're so busy on a day-to-day basis. Unless you take the time and make it something special, you don't get a chance to do that.
Right. And you have those certain things that you have to do on a daily basis. And then you have those ones that you have to do 6 months out before the end of the year. Those are all set already. So it's always having to be able to keep up with what's next. And sometimes you get lost in the day-to-day, like you said, and you can't think of what's next. Like saying what's going to happen when we pay off our mortgage. I won't be here, of course, but then what do you do, right? So you've got to have a plan. What do you do once your mortgage is paid off?
Well, that's great. That's really helpful. Anybody else thinking back? Everybody besides Natividad and Marjorie have had a chance to think now for a little while. So Bev or Rick, anything, Carlton, anything that comes to mind for you from last week?
Well, I'm reflecting on it's a process with steps, specific steps, and it's a guiding plan to incorporate other people's ideas into the focus of what we want to accomplish.
Okay, I like it. It's a process with specific steps. Incorporate other people's ideas. And what was that last thought?
I don't know. It's gone.
Where's the playback?
Incorporate other people's ideas. And I think you said something about plan, that to actually plan, make a plan. Rick, how about you? Anything?
Well, I have to be honest, I didn't learn a lot last week. And nothing against what was presented. It was presented well. Just that I've been involved in so much strategic planning. In fact, that was at one time, that was part of my career. So, what a lot of them just review going, oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, that's right. So, the whole part of just, being able to look at a situation, analyze a situation, look at, look in the future and brainstorm, get it, determine what your objectives are, and go from there. You just work everything out in a logical progression.
Got it. I hear you. It's one of those things that you do in your work life very often. So for you, that was a bit of a good review. And let me just see what Marjorie stuck in the chat there. Plans may change, and you decide what you thought you wanted is not right, and you change the plan. Another really good, I think, thank you, Marjorie, for putting that in the chat, because I think it's a really good point that people sometimes limit themselves when they're doing strategic planning because they're afraid that they're going to lock themselves into something and not have an opportunity to change it. When in fact, if you think about your strategic plan as a living document that can change. And what it does, and I think this is one of the things that Kathleen sort of brought out, was if you think about it as a map and you've mapped a route for yourself going forward, and then you get along that route at some point and they've put up a detour, or you've decided there's actually a better place to go to because you've just learned about it and it makes more sense than what you had on your plan before. And so you adjust. And I think that's, don't not plan because you're afraid you're going to get locked in. Plan and, know that you can change it if something changes for you. I'm sure that many of you have heard the what would you call it? The saying, we plan and God laughs. And I think that the point of that is that we don't know what's going to happen. We are not in a position to predict every change. And one of the things in strategic planning is to recognize, one of the parts of it, I think Rick brought this up last week, and he mentioned SWOT, SWOT, and as something that he has used in strategic planning. Strengths and weaknesses, that's the SW, and those are essentially internal. These are our internal strengths, and we have some internal challenges or some internal weaknesses, things that we don't do as well as we would like and that we'd really like to do better. And then the OT of SWOT is opportunities and threats, and those are both external, right? You've got opportunities that come up. So you might have had your route planned and all of a sudden, your brother-in-law calls and he's got tickets to a fabulous once-in-a-lifetime concert. And you're like, you know what? I can't miss this opportunity. We're making a detour here. Or threats, external. One of the ones that Rock USA is focused on right now in terms of threats is what's going on in the marketplace. All of a sudden, we have resident-owned communities who are afraid that the homes in their communities are becoming too expensive. At least for as long as I've been with Rock USA, that's the first time I've heard that fear. Where people are thinking, oh my God, I don't think my kids would be able to afford a house in my community if the house prices keep on going up. That's a market threat. You have no control over that, right? That's going, or it's out there in the marketplace for all housing. Lots of people in lots of communities are looking at that as an external threat that they do not have control over. So just to put a pin in Natividad or Marjorie's point about strategic plans need to be living documents and need to change, but they provide at least some direction. They help, as Natividad said, to step up outside, get up on the balcony, we sometimes say, get out of the day-to-day, look at things that we otherwise would not have a chance to take a look at, and make some plans, listen to some new ideas. Maybe we thought, you know what, we've had this issue with, we've had this issue with 10% of our people not wanting to become members of the co-op, and they've been renters and they don't participate and they always complain. And it's been that way for the last 10 years. And I just can't think of a new idea on how to address that. And maybe stepping up and outside of the day-to-day, and people start providing different ideas, gives you like a light bulb on that particular problem. So this is great. The only other thing I want to add to this, and I'm going to ask Kathleen if she has anything she wants to make sure she adds, is one of the big words from last week was vision. And I think that vision is something to just keep in mind as we go forward in this process of talking about strategic planning for the next until Saturday. So I'm gonna just close the board for a minute, and it should allow us to save it. But let me just see if I can do that. Let's see if that worked. That was my plan. Well, I'm going to share it with Kathleen. See if that works. Or, you know what, just because I know I can do this, I'm going to put it right to me, and then I'm going to close it. But I'm going to ask you all for there we go. Then I can erase. I'm going to ask you all to think for a minute, and I'm not going to write these down. I'm just going to move that over. For a vision, just like, you know, some people think of a vision as something that only comes to you when you're dreaming, or you've taken some type of psychedelic drug and it creates a vision. You know, if you go back to the Bible, right, people are having visions all the time. But I think for us, a vision is allowing ourselves to think about, if we didn't have to be resource constrained, if we didn't have to think about any, you know, oh, we don't have the right people, we don't have the right money, we don't have the right community, we don't have the right houses, we don't have this, we don't have that. But just if you could envision the community that you would like to see in, and I'm going to just say 5 years. I'm not going to say too long out. I'm just going to say 5 years. 5 years from now, if you were looking at your community, what would you like to see?
New
And
fence. A new
What'd you
fence
say?
down Fireside. New fence.
a new fence. So Natividad's envisioning her community with a whole new fence.
Up,
All,
trees,
Up.
trees. We need our trees back.
Edie said trees.
Edie says trees. So Edie's community has a fence, because they're in the same community, a fence, and it has trees that are just starting to grow, Edie, or they're
They
like
just removed
mid-range.
them. They
We are taking out 21 plus trees starting today. We took out a good majority of them.
They took all of mine.
They took all hers, and
Edie, what
she's
are
in
your
the front.
What are your trees gonna look like in 5 years? Just tell me that.
Oh my goodness. Hopefully it's going to be a real big, beautiful blossoming tree.
All right. So the blossoming tree with a fence around it. Carlton, you're looking at this same community. What are you seeing? What's your vision?
All our lots full.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a home on every site in Park Plaza, and flowering trees and a fence. It sounds
And-
beautiful.
And the rent has gone down.
Oh, yeah. The rent went down because
Okay.
we're full now.
Because you're full, you're able to lower the rent for everybody.
Yes.
That's an awesome vision. I love it. Bev, how about you?
That's an exciting thought. Right now, we have 30 residents and we could have up to 50. So we are moving in. We have 7 new homes so far, but I can see 14 more going in, and I can see them all filled. and new families and new board members.
So in 5 years, all of your spaces are going to be full, and you're seeing new families around the community. When you go out and drive to the supermarket or whatever, you're waving at new people that you've never met before, and you're seeing a whole new board of directors stepping up and taking on so that you can step up to the national level and do more.
Exactly.
I'm
I think
just
you put
joking.
those words
That's
in my mouth.
That's a beautiful, no, that's a beautiful vision too. It's a really, that's huge. I can just picture going from 30 to 50. Wow, what that might be like. So Marjorie, what's your vision?
We have a storm shelter for our people, so we are safe when it storms. And we have a full community with all of our sites full. And we actually have more than 2 people on our board. We are even a full board, and maybe we have a few committees.
Awesome. So Marjorie's vision of Medelia, there's a new community. This
Did
is
you hear me,
5
or did
years
I
from
block
now.
out?
There's 5 years from now, there's a storm shelter that's been built. And everybody has a sense of
Hello?
relief because there is a place if they need it in an emergency. All the sites are full. So there's new homes or new used homes in all of those sites. The Medelia Board of Directors is a 7-person or a 5-person board.
Oh, 5 at least.
So a 5-person board of directors is coming to monthly board meetings, and there's a couple of committees that are meeting and doing some of the work of the community. I think that's an awesome vision. It's awesome. Rick, how about you for Prairie Lake? When you think about it, what does Prairie Lake look like in 5 years?
I'm much more fanciful. I see, what I envision would be a nice dog park, a permanent pier around on the lake, where people can go out and sit in the pier and fish from it and just enjoy the lake. And then a board that is that elected to serve and not rule.
Okay, so I wouldn't say that it's more practical. I'd say it's just more moderate in its grandeur, right? It's a little bit more moderate in scope. So a pier, but I think the pier has got people gathering on it, people going out to fish, people bringing a chair out and sitting on that pier and using it. It's become a meeting place for the community, a casual meeting place, and a place that provides an opportunity for just organic conversation. And what was the first one?
First was a dog park.
A dog park, okay. And boy, I bet having a dog park will relieve a lot of controversy around whose dog is pooping on whose lawn. So that's an awesome thought as well, is having the dog park. And again, a full board of directors that's been elected. So I think that is, you guys know how to vision. You're there 120%. I'm gonna ask you all, we're too small a group to break into small groups. I should, first of all, Kathleen, is there anything in your community that you would like to say that you have a vision for?
Oh, I would like neighbors who respect each other's quiet peace. Maybe neighbors who know each other better, and then they would know which houses have small children, and that's an issue in my community.
Okay, interesting. Michelle, how about you? As long as you're here, we might as well put you to work, lady. Pop back on for a minute if you're there.
Turn your mic on.
No, okay, we don't have Michelle. All
We
right,
added her.
so I'm gonna ask everybody for hot
Sorry, I was having
minute.
technical difficulties.
No, no worries. So I don't
Um,
know where you live, Michelle. Where do you live?
I live in East St. Paul.
East St. Paul, in your community, just your neighborhood. Anything, if you were to vision it in 5 years from now, what would your vision be?
I would like to have a more social neighborhood. Neighbors that get together every once in a while and actually know each other. But I have a pretty good neighborhood right now, but I just don't really know anybody.
Okay, yeah, that's a really understandable vision, to want neighbors that know each other and socialize together. And much like Kathleen's, that have respect for one another, and because they know each other, they care about noise and recognizing other folks' needs. So I know a lot of resident-owned communities who say they know so many more people now that they're resident-owned versus the way they were beforehand. So that's interesting. I am just going to ask folks to think about for a minute a time where they feel like they had to be strategic in their thinking. So it does not have to be rock associated. It doesn't have to be in terms of being on your co-op. It might be at work. It might be in a family moment where you had to think strategically. It might just be in a personal moment that you can think of where you had to assess sort of what you had available to you, what your strengths were, maybe what the externals are. You know, you had an opportunity and you had to decide whether or not to take it. Or you had a threat and you had to decide how to address it based on where you were in your life at that moment. So just think for a second, and then we're just gonna talk about those for a minute. Go ahead, Marjorie. You have a question, I think.
Oh, no, I just have an example.
Oh, you're all ready to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Hold that thought
Okay.
for 1 minute. Let's just give
Okay.
everybody a chance to, let's give everybody 2 minutes here to think, because I think I'm going to ask each person to describe exactly what that was.
You have one? I do too.
You guys are all ready over there?
Yep.
Yep. Bev, you're ready? Rick? Yep. Okay. All right. Well, Marjorie, lead us off. Tell us
Okay.
about your strategic moment and why it was strategic.
I was at the time working with vulnerable adults. And it was in a community setting. In which they were at a spot where they were working on a project. And I had people from 2 different homes, one of which that I was actually working with at the time, one that I work with, but not at that exact moment in time. But I had picked her up from her home to bring her to the event. So I still felt, though I wasn't on the clock with her, I was still in that caregiving role for her. She ended up falling down the stairs where we were at and got hurt. So I had asked somebody from the event, though they weren't with it, to oversee the other people that I was with. And then I went to be with the individual that was hurt, of which then I had called her husband because he lived in a different town so that he could come. And then somebody else was already calling the ambulance and then let him know where she was being taken and what was going on. And in the meantime, I knew that the staff with the group that we were with was keeping the rest of the people calm. And then so that they wouldn't be frightened by the ambulance and everything else coming to the place so that they were being taken care of. And then once I had her in the ambulance and being taken to and her knowing that her husband was aware of the situation, I was able to go back to the group to be with them, which then when they had concerns and stuff like that, I just assured them that she was okay, that she was in good hands, and that if they wanted to, they could pray for her safety. And then we just continued on with our evening.
Wow. So in that moment, you had to be strategic in a number of ways. Is that sort of what you're
Right.
laying out there? Were there other things that you could have done that you decided not to do?
No, in fact, in a way, I was kind of even taking that, even being a little, I mean, thankfully we were a small town community and that all the people knew the other people that were leading the group. But by all due technicality, that group had nothing for overseeing the people that I was with. Do you know what I'm saying? So I had to take a risk ensuring them with the safety of them, being I wasn't going to be able to be there, but I had to like divide myself. And I thought that the injured person was needing my assistance more than the ones that were working with a craft and being preoccupied that they were still in a safe environment being overseen. So I just had to make a choice, be it right or wrong. And then I would just have to deal with the report of the situation, which my supervisor and everything said that I had made the correct choice and that you just have to do at that moment in time what feels right and safe.
Okay, so that was a strategic moment, and that was not looking forward, but in that moment you had to make some strategic choices.
Right.
Who is going to go with the injured person? Who is going to stay behind? All right, we're going to go to the room last this time. So I'm going to jump to Rick.
Well, first, it's hard to pick out one because it's basically, every day, in life is a strategic plan. The one that pops in my head though is like, buying this place, buying a home here. We were, at the time we were, living in a really nice 3-bedroom townhouse, which, was nice because everybody, anything went wrong, it was taken care of, including the appliances. Once we had the plan became, okay, do we buy this place? We learned about what it is to be in a co-op, from the person we're buying the house from, who at the time was the president of the board. And it was just making the plans of, what do we do to this house? How do we do this? How we afford it? How do we, then, move in? How do we, and get out of our lease and, all those details.
And what was what in terms of the strategy, what made you be, what was your strategic choice? How did you get there?
Well, it came to where, what was the long-term return on investment? Because we had to look forward to, the fact that we will be retiring soon, and we would be, at that time, we would be retiring soon. And what were the long-term, financial opportunities for this, how are we going to afford, what, because basically our rent was cut in half by moving here.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And so, could we, how would that work out? But then we had to buy, what do we do to buy, all the new appliances that we had to buy now. And, now we had to, we had to take care of a yard again. which we haven't had to do for, several, many years. So, just going through all that, all those steps of like, how do we, how do we buy, how are we gonna come up with the money, or can we afford this, initial payment to begin with? Will the cost per month be, more than, pay itself back? Will we be able to afford to, and how are we going to be able to afford and do lawn care and shovel our walks again, and make sure the windows are clean, all those types of things, big, going back to home ownership.
Yeah, it sounds like, if I may, that you were thinking about retirement and thinking somewhat long-term, where you wanted to be, where you could envision yourself, and looked at your resources, did some pros and cons maybe about staying versus moving. And then I'm assuming you looked at the cost and made your decision based on all of those factors and probably some others.
Yeah, that would be correct. You're very, very good at this.
No, but that's great. It's a really good example of thinking strategically. Bev, how about you?
Okay, there I am. Well, my story involves me retiring and wanting to downsize, and I found this little house not far from where I was living, and I wanted to stay in the area, and there's very few opportunities for like this around. I bought the house within 5 minutes of seeing it. And when I went up to apply to the park owner for the background check and his requirements, he told me a little story that this property was on the market. He had an investor who was not able to get the financing, and so he had offered that he was pulling off the table, but he had to exercise it for a month. So I said to my realtor, I'm going to make my purchase contingent upon him not selling this park. So I had to wait for the whole month for him to pull the purchase agreement off the table. And I also talked with him about the opportunity. I said, I know people who help the residents organize and purchase their park to become a cooperative. Would you be willing to talk with people that I know? And he said, sure. So I was strategic in my number one, my purchase. I contacted North Country Co-op Foundation because I was aware of them. Those were my people. And I knew what they did because I'd worked with them in the past from my experiences in the past. And so I called up Tori, the executive director, right away. And I said, hey, I've got a park owner who's willing to talk with you about organizing and selling to the residents. So I had to be quiet about it. I was the new kid on the block, new kid in the park. Nobody knew me. Nobody knew my past history. We didn't want to let on and pollute the whole deal. So Tori asked me just to keep a lid on it. And it was a 15-month process, 16-month process before I moved in just a year ago in September, 2 years ago in September. And we just closed in December of 2021. So it was a long process.
Wow, yeah. But your example of thinking strategically really raises the issue of opportunity.
Mhm.
It's very clear, right? And even your initial interest in buying this home, again, like Rick, you're thinking about the future, thinking where you want to be. I'm going to go so far as to say envisioning what it is you want the rest of your life to be looking at in terms of community and home. And this opportunity came in front of you. And then you were very strategic in terms of when you would be willing to actually close that deal. So I think that's that's a really good example of where an opportunity takes your route a certain way. So I appreciate that. All right, let's move to the big room there, and let's start with Edie.
Okay, I still work, in fact, I work for a temp service, so I'm an intake person, I'm a staffer. This just happened a couple of weeks ago, so, and it was like a threat. I had some people come in to apply for work, and I had a mother and a son. The son was about 26, 27 years old. The mother, she didn't speak English, so I was helping her with her app. As I was asking her questions, her son was filling out the app. He looked like a real nice kid when he came in, but when he turned on me, when I asked the mother, well, you got to put somebody as an emergency contact if anything happens to you. The kid turned around and his whole face, his eyes, everything changed. And he looked at me and he started swearing at me and saying, what the F do I need that information? I tried to explain it to him and he became more and more angry. I was terrified. I was afraid. And what I did, I decided to take the app away from him only because I was going to put him in an environment where there's other people. And I thought about their safety around this kid because he was almost like two different personalities. And I just told him, I'm sorry, I cannot take you. And he got very upset. I was shaking. When I talk about it, I still shake because I could see him, and I decided this is not good for my people that I'm going to put out to work because I could put them out there and it could be dangerous. So.
Did you ask him to leave?
Yes. No, because the mother was making the app.
Oh, I see.
But he was very angry. I mean, this is the first time I felt like I was in danger. I mean, really, I was scared because we deal with a lot of people with problems. Alcoholics comes in, we get a lot of different personalities coming in.
Do they do any kind of preparation for you in terms of planning for those situations? Like if you say, here's how we deal with client. No. So you didn't even have, that to me, you had to be strategic in the moment, very much like Marjorie, you're sort of in that emergency situation.
Yes.
So it is about thinking strategically, okay, what am I going to do? I got him, I got his mom, I got, my own safety at risk here. I got to figure out. So you're just sort of doing that strategic assessment in the moment.
In the moment, yes.
And what you would hope is that, part of what the organization would do is say, we know we're going to be strategic ahead of time. And we're going to do a couple of what ifs. What if this happens? And I think Kathleen actually even raised the what if when we were talking last week. And then, you would have had sort of a plan in place. Luckily, you did the right thing and were able to handle it in the moment. But a really good illustration of what some strategic thinking ahead of time might have given you a few more tools for that moment, but also how important it is to be able to think strategically in an instant. And a threat, like you said, a threat arose and you had to address it. So kudos to you on that front. Really good example. Thank you. Carlton.
Let me see. A while back, I was homeless, looking for a place to live. And I just said to myself, I'm going to find a place. And so eventually I came here to Park Plaza. A friend of mine rented me a room. And unfortunately, she passed away. So her family let me purchase the place from them. So I have a home now. That's about it. My strategy was to, get myself a place.
Right. So you had to, what were your other choices? Were there other choices that you had to sort of think about and then dismiss?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about moving into apartments and things like that, but then I was thinking, Well, at the time, I had just had my operation, pushing around a walker and everything, so I was just kind of worried about type of neighborhoods I'd be in. And people these days aren't very nice. And so even when I was homeless people don't like seeing a handicapped homeless man. It was pretty sad. But eventually, luckily I got a hold of my friend, who was also my ex-wife, and she let me move in with her. She rented a room to me.
So
That was the
that
start
is,
of my having a home.
well, congratulations, and I'm so happy that that you had a friend who would rent you a room, and B, that you took that opportunity and now are in a place where it's yours. That's kind of a great success story. But I think your example shows you were really conscious of your challenges. And you did do some real strategic thinking there in terms of, okay, what are the external threats? I know how people treat someone who's disabled and using a walker. I'm assessing what's out there for some of these other options. And I know what my own challenges are in terms of having just, completed this surgery. And clearly you thought about your resources because you had this friend to call on. So that's a very nice step-by-step illustration of thinking very strategically at a time where you were under duress, and I think that's the other thing. A lot of time people don't want to do that step away from the day-to-day and think, because they feel like it's not the right time. They feel like, oh my God, my situation is so dire, or I'm so busy, or the community's not in the right place right now for that.
Right.
Or
It can make you feel depressed about what's going on. And then you think, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. But luckily, I was able to get a hold of my friend, and her family always liked me. So, everything worked out pretty good.
And that's a strength, Carlton. Her family always liked you means that you got some strength there that you were also aware of. So,
Yeah.
excellent.
Unfortunately, they all died off in the past few years.
It's been a struggle.
My friend was first, then her sister, then her other sister, and her husband, and
Oh, I'm sorry. It has been a rough couple of years for sure. But I think
you get older, it's the way it is.
and I just think you're a really good illustration that just because things are not in a good place doesn't mean you can't put together a plan and be strategic.
You have to work through it.
And it's absolutely, those are good words right there. Work through it. Okay, Natividad, strategic. What time that you thought strategically? What were you thinking?
Goodness, there's so many things. It's unbelievable, shoot. I'd have to say the time we had a water break under a house. I'm going to use our community because this was astronomical. And we called in the company and said, we have a water break. Can we do a sideways dig and try and Band-Aid it and get it fixed? In the meantime, before we even called them, this water had ran all night long out into our main street. So you're talking in the middle of winter, dead of winter, where it was 0 and below, 4 to 5 inches of water frozen down the whole street. So when they came in, it was pretty scary. They did the dig, we turned it on, it didn't work. So I called everybody, including people at Rock USA. I called the mayor. I called everybody. Has anybody ever lifted a house in the air, moved it to the street and did the dig and put it back? No one had an answer. So during that day, somebody slipped me a card and said, here's a phone number to a crane guy. I didn't give it to you. I said, okay, in the pocket, right? Then I talked to Valley Rich, which are the people who were doing the water fix, the water main break fix, right? And I said, if I get the crane, the electricity, the gas, you all together by 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, would you be able to do it? And they all said yes. I said, okay, let me sleep on it and I will call you at 5 o'clock in the morning, but be ready by 6 to move. And I did. I slept on it. I said, we're going to put this house in the air. We put the family in a hotel. We got the crane out here. We spent 4 hours moving the ice. That took 2 trucks from Valley Ridge to do that. We got everybody in. We put the ties on it. We lifted the house, flipped it around and put it in the street. Did the dig, did the repair within an hour. Mind you, we had to disconnect everything. We had to disconnect the air conditioner, the gas, the electric, everything. The house was over 40 years old. It sustained a tiny crack in a window and a tiny crack across the roof. And somebody damaged their old TV antenna that was on top of the roof. And it took us a week to get everything back together. The husband and wife stayed in their hotel for that entire time, but we did it. And we totally put that on record to say that somebody actually did it. And I also had to figure out, okay, who's going to be a project manager? Who's going to stay on site during the whole time? Because I have a full-time job. So I took the first day, and then the second day I had my partner at the time and our secretary stay in a truck with a bunch of munchies and a bunch of pop and watch them do everything. So that way we were secure. And it worked. It totally worked. And that was like the biggest thing. But my big thing is if I can't figure it out, I need to sleep on it and dream it. And if I can dream it, I will do it. There's where I get most of my stuff. So yeah, premonition dreams are not always the best, but they work. So that's my big story.
Great
Thank you.
story.
It is a great story. And I actually remember the day.
It was crazy.
And I do remember that Natividad called everybody, but I think it is a really good example again of saying, okay, again, sort of like Marjorie and Edie, you're in an emergency situation, but you had, I will say that rather than having had a plan for such a thing happening,
Who has a plan for that, right?
you did know what your resources were. You knew what your resources were, and you put them all together in the right order. And I think the other thing that you said that's really important is you slept on it. You said, all right. And I think that's a really good piece of strategic planning is, I think Rick mentioned brainstorm, somebody else last time mentioned the fact that the whole SWOT analysis idea. And those are all the tools for strategic planning. And sleeping on it doesn't sound like a tool, but in fact it is. It's about sort of putting together that map that Kathleen was talking about, and then saying, let's take a week, let's take till our next board meeting. Let's put it out there and let others, get a chance to look at it. Let's give it a chance and then come back and look at it a second time. And I think that that is strategic in and of itself.
Mary, with that too, a lot of times you have to remember that you're under a lot of stress. You're going to have to, at that time, we did not do the infrastructure. It was before infrastructure. So we were going to shut everybody down. The entire community was not going to have water for whatever amount of time. And the team that we use is really good because they know our infrastructure. But what if they hadn't? We would have been without water for a long period of time. So, getting everybody ready the night before to fill tubs and pans and do all your laundry and do all your showers, get everything done, and then step away from yourself for a minute because you're taking care of over 80 families and you're going to shut them off in the dead of winter and hope to goodness that you're not going to freeze any pipes. So, you know, you also had that on top of everything else is what are we gonna do if we freeze people's pipes? Who's gonna pay for it? How are we gonna, you know? It was just so much to deal with at the time. So I
Yeah,
had to
and-
sleep.
Yep. And I think that again, you thought you were thinking of what ifs. You know, you had a plan and you said, all right, what if this? What if somebody's house breaks? What if we, you know, what are we going to be responsible for? What if it's longer than they said it's going to be? You know, again, just planning strategy and thinking it from a strategic mindset, not, you know, throwing everything up in the air and or throwing your hands up in the air and not taking that time to think it through. I think your story also tells us a lot about emergency planning, right?
Mhm.
Being because you have a lot of those steps in mind. I would say also, you know, part of strategic planning when you're thinking about capital improvements. I think a lot of people brought this up. That's where they feel strategic is when they do think about their infrastructure, and that being, you know, thinking strategically about how they get their infrastructure taken care of. If they have to apply for a grant, then they have to, you know, plan ahead. Okay, the grant round comes in the fall, so we have to get all our ducks in a row and we have to know who our engineer is going to be. And I would say in your situation, like you said, our team knew our infrastructure. So part of that thinking in terms of strategic planning, when you think about capital improvements, is I'm going to build a relationship as a community with a couple of vendors so that when I have an issue, they'll know my community. I'm going to build a relationship with the, you know, the attorney that we work with so that when we end up with an emergency, a co-op member is suing us. This is an attorney who knows us. They know what we do, why we do it. We have a relationship together. And I think, you know, another good example is Carlton's example. He didn't strategically plan to be friends with this person, but he had built some relationships over time. So sometimes things like that don't initially appear to be strategic, but really they are, in the sense that they set you up for creating that vision. So Edie and her trees, right? She's got this vision for blooming trees. Well,
Poor thing.
and we said that 5 years from now, right? Well, Edie might start now thinking about who in this greater community might be interested in donating trees to us. You know, if in 5 years, I want a tree that's, you know, as big as at least up to the top of my first floor, you know, my first floor, not my roof maybe, but my first floor. Well, I need to look up and see what grows quickly, you know, what will grow that quickly, and then work backwards as to when I might have to plant it. So she's information, research, and also building relationships. I'm going to start now. I'm going to start, you know, building some relationships
Yesterday.
with the landscapers or, you know, whoever it might be. I'm just sort of tossing all these things out there. Let me do something really quick because I know we don't have too much time, and I want to just share the, and most of you have seen this because I think several people came to the Better Together call when we looked at some of these things. But this is just to start folks off on, you know, that question of what is strategic planning, and giving everybody a definition for it. Strategic planning is an organization's process of defining its direction, setting that vision, I'm going to say, setting goals. So I know where I want to be in 5 years. I'm going to set some goals. I'm going to set some 1-year goals, some 2-year goals, some 3-year goals, maybe, and making decisions on how to use resources to attain its goals. And I'm going to make sure that you all have a copy of these so you don't have to write stuff down. but just so that you just have a working definition of this. What is strategic planning? Thinking strategically, taking a clear-eyed look at internal strengths and weaknesses. This is the whole SWOT, S-W-O-T. I think the thing here is clear-eyed. I want to say every one of you in your description of your strategic moment were very clear-eyed. Nobody was fooling themselves. Nobody was saying, oh, it's not so bad. Oh, I don't really need to do that right. Well, I actually think that I have a lot more money than I thought than I really do have. Or I'm just being totally honest with oneself. So clear-eyed is an important aspect of thinking strategically. And again, the strengths and weaknesses is always a tough one. I like to think of it as challenges or things you want to change, but they're internal and you have some control over them. So when you think about strengths and weaknesses, you have some control. And then taking an equally clear-eyed view or clear-eyed look at external opportunities and threats. And we had some really good examples of folks being very clear-eyed and looking at opportunities and looking at threats. And those were things that they could not control. They could respond to them. They could act on them. They could grab that opportunity when they had the chance, but those were external, not in their direct control. And then it also requires setting priorities and looking into an uncertain future from many different perspectives. So that gets to, I think, what we were talking about in terms of being willing, two things, being willing to change your strategic plan because it's an uncertain future. You know, you don't know what's going to happen, but you can still make a plan based on your best knowledge. The other piece of that was from different perspectives. So I am using that to launch into where we're going with this Rock USA strategic plan. We want as many perspectives as possible. When we want as many people looking clear-eyed at what Rock USA and Rock Association's strengths are and their weaknesses, and not trying to put on rose-colored glasses, not trying to be Minnesota nice, being really clear-eyed and really honest about what they're seeing in terms of strengths and weaknesses, and then opportunities and threats. Again, and we of course, as some folks here, Marjorie and Natividad, not sure, Bev, I don't think you were in a rock yet when we did the last strategic plan. It was 2018. But the way that Rock USA has done strategic planning, and actually one night, I'll just talk about it from where we're doing it this time as well, is we ask the staff to think about these questions, and then we look at the themes that come out from everybody who's on staff. We ask the board to look at these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and what themes come out of the board. We ask the CTAPs, so all of your TA providers are asked to do the same thing. And we ask our Rock USA leaders from across the country, who's got the better perspective. We also have some, we don't ask external stakeholders to do the same level of strategic thinking with us, but we might take some of the themes and then ask them to reflect on those as external stakeholders. And who would that be? I think of external stakeholders as the National Cooperative Bank, who has consistently provided financing for ROCs along with Rock USA Capital. So they're a very good partner in terms of the development of more and more of these resident-owned community cooperatives. We might think of a longtime funder that has regularly funded the Community Leadership Institute, for instance. like NeighborWorks America has always been a huge partner around community leadership development. We might ask them. I'm not sure how many of you have seen the last strategic plan that Rock USA did. It was in 2018, and we should have done strategic planning last year because it's a 3-year plan. We do short plans because we think once you get out too far, that uncertain future makes it really difficult to make a plan that's going to stand the test of time. So we do 3 years. We publish it. So this strategic plan is on Rock USA's website, and it's also on the Rock Association website. And we do that because we want our stakeholders to hold us accountable. We want to go public with what our commitments are. And once you go public with a strategic plan, that's a really interesting concept. It sort of puts you on a different trajectory in terms of making it happen. You know, it's sort of like when you decide you're going to, let's just say, you decide you're going to paint the living room. You've been thinking about painting the living room for the last 3 years. You know it needs it. You clean and you look at those walls. Oh God, I gotta paint this living room. And you tell yourself, okay, I'm painting the living room this summer. I've just made this decision, I'm gonna do it. But until you actually tell someone, I'm painting the living room this summer, you could always push it off, right? You could always, maybe not this summer, maybe the fall. And so this idea of going public is why we publish this strategic plan and also ask folks to comment on it. I will just say it's been very, very helpful to Rock USA to have a strategic plan on its website, because unbeknownst to us, community owners who are skeptical about resident ownership have gone and looked at the strategic plan and told us afterwards that they realized that this was the real thing. We've had funders that we've applied, you know, we've made an application for a grant, and they have, I was asked to meet with one of these funders one time because they were here in the Boston area and Paul couldn't make it down. He usually does that. And when I sat down and talked with them, they said, you know, you can't believe how hard it is to find nonprofits strategic plans. And the fact that yours was right there made it really easy for us to make you one of the finalists for this grant application. So I say that in terms of A, being accountable, and B, making your vision and your strategy to get there known to people that you might in the future ask for assistance. So it's very helpful. So this was our last strategic plan. We haven't actually met all of our objectives, but we've done pretty well. And we've delivered to our board of directors, including Marjorie and John Egan from Mountain West and Deb Winowitz from the New England area. So your direct representatives on the board, we've delivered a dashboard of how well we're doing every quarter so that the Rock USA board says, what's going on? You set this goal, you set this focus, you set these objectives. How well is the staff actually doing at reaching them? We don't have enough time to go into the whole thing, but if anybody is interested, I would be glad to share sort of the dashboard level where we are on all of those strategic priorities. So what I'm going to be asking folks to do, and Marjorie is going to lead you all in a session on Saturday at the library nearby Bev's Community, it is in a process of, you're not going to have to do a SWOT analysis. We're using 3 what we consider powerful questions. and asking folks to discuss those and then have a bit of a visioning session that will include some goal setting. And then we're gonna ask you to take a break and come back and take a second look. You know, sort of, you don't get, it's not sleeping on it, but certainly an opportunity to come back and say, oh, those are the themes that have sort of come out of this, and these are the objectives or goals that we're saying, Rock Association, we want to see you do this in the next 3 years, and Rock USA, we want to see you do that in the next 3 years. So I'm hoping that going through that process will also help you guys in your strategic planning. So we have only 10 minutes left. I'm gonna ask if people want to just take maybe 5 minutes to think about their vision that they talked about and think of one next step towards planning strategically towards that. So Edie's going to think about trees. Carlton's going to think about lowering the rent. Natividad's thinking about her fence. Rick is thinking about his pier and his dog park, and a full board that's been elected by the members. Marjorie's thinking about her storm shelter, and she's thinking about a full board of directors and possibly some committees. And Bev is thinking about her 30 home community going to a 50 home community, and lots of new neighbors walking around and waving from their cars, and some of them being the next board of directors, enabling her to devote more of her time to the national. No, just kidding. That's not fair. And Michelle and Kathleen are thinking about what would be a next step that they might take in order to get their neighbors to know one another better. Just let's take a few minutes. You can turn off your camera if you want and just sit. You can write whatever might be helpful. And I'll just leave your speaker on because I'll call you back when there's only 3 minutes left. folks ready to come back yet? Is that enough time there? All right. So what do you got as a next step? Let's see. Let's start with, I'm gonna start with Bev.
Better refinancing opportunities for the new home sales.
Your first step is, sounds like it's a resource that you need.
Mhm.
So you need better refinancing opportunities.
Financing, not refinancing.
Financing.
Financing for the new homes.
Absolutely. Okay, that's so I'm going to just call that resource identification. That's one of your first steps. And all right, what's the next step for you, Rick? Oh, you got to unmute, bud. No, you're not unmuted there.
Not working. There we go.
There you go.
Okay. It wasn't working for a minute there. They would be I want to first clarify something about our board. We do have a full board, just that our board has the mindset of that they are the rulers and not the leaders.
Mm,
So we want to get a board that realizes, they recognize that they're to serve and not to rule. That's what we're looking for. But that's something I'd rather not deal with right now, because the other things are easier. The dog park and the pier, they both go on the same thing. First off, we have to develop an acceptable design for each of them. Then we have to decide a location for them, have to arrange for funding and or hopefully grants, and then arrange for construction. It's in these few minutes, that's all I could flush them out more, but that's what I have for that. As far as getting the board, that would be something we'll be dealing with soon, I think, with the book club, where we're dealing with how to talk dirty and influence people, or the one with Jennifer that's coming up. So
I'm gonna say, yeah, so on that front, you're doing some research on the board front.
yeah.
I think that sounds like a great idea. Okay. How about the big room back there? It looked like you guys were working together. I don't know if you were or not.
Yeah, we were. Carlton said, uh-oh. Okay, Edie?
I think finding some fundings for our trees and maybe arborists we go. I think those are the main parts. Not just my trees, but the whole community.
Right.
She'd like her tree first.
Yes, of course.
And Carlton?
Well, for lowering the rent, we would have to have all the lots filled, have all the capital improvements done, and then we can look at more at lowering the rent.
Right. So you got it's a vision that is going to require some strategic steps first. I think I think that's absolutely a good first step, is to say, what do we got to do first? You got to fill lots, finish the capital improvements. All right. That's great. And I'm just going to give one idea over there. There's some groups that are looking to green areas, and so you can they will help you and by providing an arborist and some opportunities to get trees for free. Just a thought on the tree front. All right, Marjorie, first step.
Working with our TA provider for helping us with getting the application and stuff like that for the grants, to see if we can hopefully get some grants and start the process of doing the funding and everything for the shelter. Designs and stuff have already been, for the most part, done. It would just be tweaking to our preference inside.
That's great. That's awesome. And how about Kathleen and or Michelle? You guys have any thoughts on a first step?
Michelle, do you want to go? I can't tell if that's a yes or a no.
I don't
Well,
know
I
if can she hear us?
You just have to unmute Michelle. She knows she has to
Oh.
unmute, but it's not working.
Oh,
Kathleen, you go in the meanwhile. Anything that you thought of, anything come to mind?
Well, I've been on a campaign. I've been in my house for about 14 years. And I've been on a campaign to get to know my neighbors. And most of them I have a cell phone number for. But one of the problems is with, we have a lot of rental houses and they turn over quite quickly. And so those people aren't really vested in the neighborhood. My strategy is usually to get to know the kids. But that doesn't necessarily quiet down the parents. So no, right now I'm thinking about moving, but that's really not the kind of, that's not the answer that you're looking for, is it?
We have
No,
openings.
but I think you should do some strategic planning around that. Weigh your pros and cons and create your vision. All right, we're over time. It's 8:30. I just wanna
Okay.
ask folks if they have any questions or parting words or anything that would be helpful leading up to Saturday. Go ahead, Natividad.
I didn't get to offer up, but getting your capital improvement plan updated. We haven't done ours in a long time, and so that's what's going to be at our next board meeting. Because once you have that in place, then you can start with your strategic plan for the future, right?
Mhm.
Because it's required by Rock USA to have a capital improvement plan. Just saying. So
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And there's often a lot of those kinds of things that really are strategic planning, as I think all of you, pointed out and noted.
And if I can break in and say, yeah, it's one thing that when you got your funding, you were required to have a capital improvement plan. But if you haven't checked in with it for a while,
Mhm.
that's part of the problem with a strategic plan. Too many organizations write one, but then they never check back in with it.
right.
So just like they check the box and they put it in a drawer, and you do have to revisit it.
And that's where we're at right now. We've been doing so much capital improvement, and it's like time to take a breath and look at what we've done and what we still need to do, and then go from there.
It's awesome. That's a great way to close. I love it. So thank you all very much. And I really thank you for participating in this and giving Rock USA the benefit of your perspective in terms of where we're going. So I thank you for that as well.